I thought the date was over until my boss arrived and revealed she was my date. Standing there in that upscale restaurant, watching Catherine Cook walk through the door in an elegant black dress, I felt my world tilt sideways. The woman I had been texting with for 3 weeks, the mysterious Maria from the dating app, was actually my 47-year-old boss. The same Catherine Cook who had been making my work life miserable for the past 6 months. She spotted me immediately, her confident stride faltering for just a moment when our eyes met. The recognition hit her face like a wave, and I watched her expressions cycle through surprise, confusion, and something that might have been mortification. I stood up from the table, my napkin falling to the floor, unsure whether to run or stay, and face the most awkward conversation of my 29-year-old life. Catherine approached slowly, her usual boardroom composure cracking around the edges. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, two people who thought they knew each other, discovering they had been completely wrong. Before we see how this ends, tell us where you are watching from and hype this video in the comments. Trust me, you are going to want to stick around for this story because it changed everything I thought I knew about love, work, and taking chances. Let me back up and tell you how I got to that moment. My name is Brian Williams, and 6 months ago I started working as a marketing coordinator at Pinnacle Consulting. It was supposed to be my dream job, a chance to finally use my business degree and climb out of the retail hell I had been stuck in since college. What I did not expect was Catherine Cook. Catherine was the vice president of client relations, and from day one she seemed determined to make my life difficult. Every project I submitted came back with red ink corrections. Every presentation I gave received pointed questions that made me feel like I was back in high school, unprepared for a pop quiz. She was demanding, perfectionist, and seemingly impossible to please. But I could not deny she was brilliant. Catherine had built the client relations department from nothing into the most profitable division of the company. At 47, she commanded respect in every meeting, negotiated deals that left competitors speechless, and somehow managed to look effortlessly elegant even during the most stressful deadlines. She was also intimidating as hell. Catherine had this way of looking at you over her reading glasses that made you feel like she could see straight through any excuse or half-hearted effort. Her dark hair was always perfectly styled, her suits impeccable, and her heels clicked across the office floor with the authority of someone who knew exactly where she was going. I tried to stay out of her way, but our departments worked closely together, which meant regular interactions that left me feeling frustrated and inadequate. She would critique my market research, question my strategy recommendations, and send my reports back with notes like "needs more depth" or unclear messaging that made me want to scream. The worst part was that she was usually right. Every suggestion she made improved my work. Every criticism pointed out a genuine flaw I had missed. But her delivery was so cold, so clinical, that I started to dread seeing her name in my email inbox. My personal life was not much better. I had been single for almost a year after my last relationship ended badly. Sarah had decided I was not ambitious enough, not driven enough, not enough of a lot of things. The breakup left me questioning everything about myself, and dating felt like an exercise in disappointment. That is when my roommate Dennis Robinson convinced me to try online dating. Dennis was one of those guys who seemed to effortlessly attract women, always had a date lined up, always knew the right thing to say. He made online dating sound easy, like shopping for the perfect match from the comfort of your couch. So 3 weeks before that restaurant encounter, I created a profile on one of those apps that promised meaningful connections rather than hookups. I uploaded a few decent photos, wrote what I hoped was a charming bio about loving hiking and trying new restaurants, and started swiping. Most conversations fizzled out after a few messages, but then I matched with someone named Maria Lopez. Her photos showed a woman with warm brown eyes and an infectious smile, though she kept her pictures somewhat distant, nothing too close up. Her bio mentioned loving books, wine, and deep conversations, which sounded perfect to me. Our first message exchange was about a book we had both read, and I was surprised by how thoughtful and intelligent her responses were. Maria had opinions about everything from politics to philosophy, but she expressed them in a way that invited discussion rather than argument. She was funny too, with a dry sense of humor that caught me off guard and made me laugh out loud while reading her texts. We moved from the app to texting within a few days, and our conversations became the highlight of my routine. Maria would send me good morning texts that brightened my commute, and we would exchange messages throughout the day about everything from work stress to childhood memories. She was an excellent listener, asking follow-up questions that showed she was really paying attention to what I shared. What struck me most was how easy it was to be honest with her. I found myself telling Maria things I had never shared with anyone, like how inadequate I felt at my new job, how my last relationship had shaken my confidence, how sometimes I worried I was not living up to my potential. She responded with empathy and encouragement, sharing her own struggles with feeling undervalued and misunderstood. Maria told me she worked in corporate consulting, which seemed like a coincidence since I worked in a similar field. She was older than me, she admitted, though she was vague about exactly how much older. She had been married before, she said, but it ended several years ago when they grew apart. She was cautious about dating, she explained, because she had been hurt before and was not interested in games or casual encounters. I found her honesty refreshing. Most of the women I had dated seemed to be performing some version of themselves, trying to be what they thought I wanted rather than showing me who they really were. Maria was different. She was direct about her needs and boundaries, clear about what she was looking for, and genuinely interested in building something real. Our text conversations grew longer and more intimate as the days passed. Maria would send me pictures of sunsets from her apartment balcony, and I would respond with photos of my attempts at cooking dinner. She shared stories about her childhood, growing up in a strict household where emotions were rarely discussed, and I told her about my family, loving but chaotic, where everyone talked over each other and nothing ever got resolved. We discovered we had similar taste in movies, both preferring character-driven dramas to action blockbusters. We both loved hiking, though she admitted she had not been on a trail in months because she had been working too much. We both struggled with work-life balance, feeling like our jobs demanded more than we wanted to give, but not knowing how to set better boundaries. After 2 weeks of texting, Maria suggested we meet for dinner. She picked an upscale restaurant downtown, somewhere I probably would not have chosen because it seemed expensive, but I was excited enough about meeting her that I did not care about the cost. We planned to meet on a Friday evening, and I spent the entire week looking forward to it. The day of our date, I was nervous in a way I had not been in years. I changed clothes 3 times, trying to find something that looked nice, but not like I was trying too hard. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early and asked for a table for 2, telling the hostess I was waiting for someone. I sat there checking my phone, reading over our text exchange from that morning where Maria had said she was looking forward to meeting me. She had seemed genuinely excited, mentioning that she had even bought a new dress for the occasion. I was touched that she had put thought into our meeting, that it mattered enough to her to make an effort. 20 minutes after our planned meeting time, I started to worry. Maria was not someone who seemed like she would be late without calling. I sent her a text asking if everything was okay, but got no response. 30 minutes late, I began to wonder if I had been stood up. The restaurant was getting busier, and I could feel the hostess eyeing my table, probably wondering if she should give it to someone else. I ordered an appetizer to buy more time and tried to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe Maria was stuck in traffic, or had a work emergency, or her phone died. 45 minutes late, I was ready to give up. I had finished the appetizer and was debating whether to order dinner for myself or just pay the check and leave. The whole situation felt humiliating. Sitting alone in a nice restaurant while other couples enjoyed their evening around me. That is when Catherine Cook walked through the door. I noticed her immediately because seeing your boss anywhere outside of work is jarring. But seeing her in a restaurant where you are waiting for a date is surreal. Catherine looked different than she did at the office. Her hair was down instead of pulled back in its usual bun, and she was wearing a black dress that was elegant but softer than her typical business attire. She spoke to the hostess, and I could see them having some kind of discussion. Catherine kept glancing around the restaurant, and when her gaze swept past my table, I instinctively looked down at my phone, hoping she would not notice me. The last thing I wanted was to explain to my demanding boss why I was sitting alone in an expensive restaurant on a Friday night. But then Catherine started walking toward my table, and I realized with growing horror that she was not just passing by. She was approaching me directly, her expression shifting from confusion to recognition to something that looked like panic. That is when it hit me. The timing, the location, the way she was dressed, the fact that Maria had stopped responding to my text right around the time Catherine would have been leaving the office. The woman I had been texting with for 3 weeks, sharing my deepest thoughts and feelings with, was my boss. Catherine stopped a few feet from my table, and we stared at each other in mutual shock. I could see her mind working, probably making the same connections I was making, realizing that Brian from the dating app was the same Brian whose marketing reports she had been critiquing for months. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling unsteady. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. The restaurant noise around us seemed to fade as we processed this impossible situation. Finally, Catherine broke the silence. Her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it, missing its usual commanding tone. She said, "Brian, I think we need to talk." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She sat down across from me, moving carefully as if she was afraid any sudden motion might shatter the fragile reality we found ourselves in. The waiter appeared almost immediately, probably relieved that my mysterious date had finally arrived. Catherine ordered a glass of wine without looking at the menu, and I asked for another beer, needing something to do with my hands. After the waiter left, we sat in silence again. I studied Catherine's face, trying to reconcile the woman across from me with the Maria I had been texting. Now that I knew, I could see similarities. The intelligence that came through in her messages was the same sharp mind that dissected my work presentations. The dry humor that had made me laugh over text was there in the slight irony of her expression. Catherine spoke first, her voice carefully controlled. "I suppose you have questions." I had about 1,000,000 questions, but the first one that came out was, "Why Maria Lopez?" She looked down at her hands, and for the first time since I had known her, why Catherine seemed vulnerable. She said she had used her middle name and mother's maiden name because she wanted to keep her professional and personal life separate. She had been burned before, she explained, by colleagues who found out about her dating life and used it against her. I asked how long she had known it was me, and she admitted she had suspected for the past week. Something about my writing style in the messages had seemed familiar, and when I mentioned working in marketing at a consulting firm, she started putting pieces together. "Why did you not say anything?" I asked. Catherine looked up at me then, and I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. She said she had been dreading this moment because she knew it would ruin everything. Not just our potential relationship, but probably my job too, since dating subordinates was against company policy. The waiter brought our drinks, and we both took long sips, buying time to process. I found myself studying Catherine's face, trying to see Maria and her features. The warmth that had come through in her text was hidden behind her professional mask, but I could sense it underneath. I told her I understood why she had been hesitant to reveal her identity, but I was confused about why she had come to the restaurant at all. If she knew it was me, why show up for the date? Catherine's composure cracked slightly, and she admitted she had been sitting in her car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, debating whether to leave. But she said she could not stop thinking about our conversations, about how connected she had felt to someone for the first time in years. She decided she owed it to both of us to at least try to have an honest conversation. I appreciated her honesty, but I was still struggling to process everything. The woman I had been falling for through text was the same person who made my work life stressful. The intimate conversations we had shared suddenly felt complicated by our professional relationship. Catherine seemed to sense my confusion. She said she knew this was awkward and probably impossible, but she wanted me to know that everything she had shared with me as Maria was real. Her feelings, her interest in me, her hope that we might build something together. None of that had been fake. I believed her, but I was not sure what to do with that information. Dating your boss was complicated under the best circumstances, and our circumstances were far from ideal. We barely got along at work, and now I was supposed to believe we could have a romantic relationship. But as I sat there looking at Catherine, really looking at her for the first time, I started to see the woman behind the professional facade. The vulnerability in her eyes, the way she was nervously turning her wine glass, the fact that she had taken a huge risk by showing up tonight. All of it reminded me of the person I had been getting to know through our messages. I asked her if she wanted to start over, to try having a normal conversation without the weight of our work relationship hanging over us. Catherine smiled then, the first genuine smile I had ever seen from her, and said she would like that. We spent the next hour talking, really talking, in a way we had never done at the office. Catherine told me about her divorce 3 years earlier, how it had left her feeling like she had wasted 20 years of her life trying to be the perfect corporate wife. She had thrown herself into work afterward, using her career success to rebuild her sense of self-worth. But the loneliness had been crushing, she admitted. She was tired of going home to an empty apartment, tired of having no one to share her victories or comfort her defeats. When she decided to try online dating, she had been terrified but desperate enough to take the risk. I shared my own struggles with feeling inadequate at work and in relationships. I told her how my ex-girlfriend's criticism had shaken my confidence, how starting over in a new job had made me question whether I was capable of success. I admitted that our work relationship had been particularly challenging for me because I respected her abilities, but felt like I could never measure up to her standards. Catherine looked genuinely surprised by this confession. She said she had been hard on me because she saw potential in my work that I was not fully realizing. She thought I was capable of much more than I was delivering, and her criticism had been intended to push me toward excellence, not tear me down. This revelation shifted something between us. I started to see her professional behavior in a different light, and she began to understand how her management style had affected me. We were both guilty of making assumptions about each other's motivations. As the evening progressed, I found myself relaxing in Catherine's presence for the first time since I had started working for her, without the pressure of our professional dynamic. She was funny and engaging, the same person who had been making me laugh through text messages for weeks. She told me stories about her childhood, growing up as the youngest of 4 children in a family where everyone was expected to excel. The pressure to succeed had driven her to work harder than anyone else, but it had also made it difficult for her to show vulnerability or ask for help. I shared my own family stories about growing up with parents who were supportive but not particularly ambitious, who valued happiness over achievement. It had taken me years to develop any real drive, and even now I sometimes struggled with imposter syndrome. Catherine listened without judgment, asking questions that showed she was genuinely interested in understanding me better. This was the woman I had been falling for through text, warm and empathetic and present in a way that made me feel seen. When the waiter asked if we wanted dessert, I realized we had been talking for over 2 hours. The restaurant was starting to empty out, and I suddenly felt self-conscious about how long it had been there. Catherine must have noticed too because she suggested we continue the conversation somewhere else. She said there was a coffee shop nearby that stayed open late, somewhere we could talk without feeling rushed. Walking to the coffee shop together felt surreal. Here I was, strolling down the sidewalk with my boss, the woman who had been intimidating me for months, and it felt natural in a way I had not expected. Catherine had relaxed completely, her professional armor set aside for the evening. The coffee shop was nearly empty, just a few students with laptops and an elderly couple sharing a piece of cake. Catherine and I found a corner table, and she ordered a decaf latte while I got hot chocolate, which made her smile. "You really are younger than me," she said, but there was no judgment in it, just observation. I asked her directly how much older she was, since it had been one of the few things she had been vague about in our texts. Catherine hesitated for a moment, then told me she was 47, 18 years older than me. The number hung between us for a moment. I had known she was older, but hearing the exact gap made it feel more real somehow. 18 years was significant, enough that we had grown up in different decades, experienced different cultural touchstones, were at completely different stages of our careers. But sitting there looking at Catherine, I found I did not care as much as I thought I would. The woman across from me was intelligent, beautiful, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. The age difference was just a number. I told her that, and Catherine looked surprised. She said she had been worried the gap would be too much for me, that I would realize I wanted someone closer to my own age, someone who could relate to my experiences better. I asked her if the age difference bothered her, and she admitted it did sometimes. She worried about what people would think, whether I would eventually grow tired of being with someone older, whether she was being selfish by pursuing someone who was just starting his career while she was already established in hers. These were valid concerns, I realized, but they were not insurmountable. Every relationship had challenges, and at least we were both aware of the potential issues and could address them honestly. We talked about our work situation too, acknowledging that dating would complicate our professional relationship. Catherine said she had been researching company policy, and while dating between departments was discouraged, it was not explicitly forbidden as long as there was no direct reporting relationship. Since I reported to Frank Lee, the marketing director, and he reported to the CEO while Catherine reported directly to the CEO as well, we were not technically in each other's chain of command. It would still be complicated, but it might be manageable if we were careful about maintaining professional boundaries at work. The conversation turned to what we both wanted from a relationship. Catherine was clear that she was not interested in casual dating. At her age, she said, she was looking for something serious, someone she could build a life with. She had already done the casual dating thing in her 20s and 30s, and now she wanted depth and commitment. I appreciated her directness. I was tired of games and uncertainty too. My last relationship had dragged on for months without either of us being clear about what we wanted, and it had ended badly because we were never on the same page. Catherine asked me what I was looking for, and I told her honestly that I wanted someone I could be completely myself with, someone who challenged me to grow, but accepted me as I was. I wanted partnership, not just romance. Someone to share both the exciting moments and the mundane ones. As I spoke, I realized I was describing the connection I had felt with Maria through our text conversations. The ease of communication, the mutual support, the sense that we were building something together even through messages. That person was sitting across from me now. We stayed at the coffee shop until they started stacking chairs on tables around us. Catherine offered to drive me home since I had taken an Uber to the restaurant, and I accepted. Her car was exactly what I would have expected, a sleek silver sedan that was practical but elegant. The drive to my apartment gave us a few more minutes of quiet conversation. Catherine asked about my living situation, and I told her about sharing a place with Dennis, how he was always trying to set me up with women and would probably be shocked to learn I had been texting with my boss for weeks. Catherine laughed at that, and the sound was different from her professional laugh, warmer and more genuine. She said she had not told anyone about her online dating experiment either, too embarrassed to admit she was looking for love on an app. When we reached my building, Catherine parked but left the engine running. We sat there for a moment, both of us aware that the evening was ending, but reluctant to let it go. The conversation had been everything I had hoped our first date would be, despite the shocking revelation about her identity. I asked Catherine if she wanted to try this again, maybe without the surprise element next time. She smiled and said she would like that, but we should probably take things slowly given the complications. I agreed, though part of me wanted to invite her upstairs right then. The connection I had felt through our texts was even stronger in person, and the physical attraction that had been building through weeks of messaging was now impossible to ignore. Instead, I leaned over and kissed her cheek, a soft gesture that felt appropriate for the moment. Catherine's eyes closed briefly, and when she opened them, I saw the same longing I was feeling. She said goodnight and waited until I was safely inside my building before driving away. I watched her taillights disappear around the corner and realized my life had just become infinitely more complicated and more interesting. Dennis was waiting up when I got to the apartment, eager to hear about my date. I told him it had gone well but kept the details vague, not ready to explain the whole situation yet. He was satisfied with my non-answer and went to bed, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I lay awake for hours that night, replaying the evening and trying to process everything that had happened. The woman I had been falling for through text was my boss, the same person who had been making my work life challenging for months. But underneath her professional exterior was someone vulnerable and lonely, someone looking for the same connection I was seeking. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Catherine. She thanked me for the evening and said she had enjoyed getting to know the real me. She suggested we take the weekend to think about everything and talk more on Monday. I appreciated her caution, but I already knew what I wanted. The connection we had built through our messages was real, and the woman I had met last night was someone I wanted to know better. The complications were significant, but they were not enough to make me walk away. Monday morning at work was surreal. Catherine and I maintained our professional demeanor, but there was an underlying awareness between us that had not been there before. When she critiqued my latest project proposal, I could hear the constructive intent behind her words instead of just the criticism. She stopped by my desk later that afternoon, ostensibly to discuss a client presentation, but really to ask if I was free for dinner that week. We made plans for Wednesday evening, somewhere more casual than our first unexpected date. Our second official date was everything the first one could have been if we had not been dealing with the shock of recognition. Catherine picked a small Italian restaurant in her neighborhood, somewhere cozy and intimate, where we could talk without worrying about running into colleagues. She looked beautiful in a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes, and I told her so. Catherine blushed slightly, and I realized she was not used to compliments. Her ex-husband had probably taken her beauty for granted, and her professional environment certainly was not the place for personal observations. We talked about everything that night. Catherine shared more about her marriage, how it had slowly deteriorated as they grew in different directions. She had become more ambitious and driven, while her ex-husband had become content with mediocrity. They had stopped communicating about anything meaningful, living like roommates rather than partners. I told her about my relationship with Sarah, how her constant criticism had made me doubt myself. Catherine listened without trying to fix anything, just offering support and understanding. She said she could see how that experience would make someone cautious about opening up again. The conversation flowed as easily as our text exchanges had, maybe even more so because we could see each other's expressions and body language. Catherine was an engaging storyteller, funny and self-deprecating in a way that made her seem more human than her professional persona suggested. When dinner was over, Catherine invited me back to her apartment for coffee. I knew this was a significant step, letting me into her personal space, and I was honored by the trust it represented. Her apartment was beautiful, decorated with warm colors and comfortable furniture that reflected her personality better than her office wardrobe did. There were bookshelves everywhere, filled with everything from business texts to romance novels, and I teased her about the latter. Catherine laughed and said she was a hopeless romantic, despite her practical exterior. She had always believed in love, even when her marriage was falling apart, even when dating felt hopeless. That belief had led her to try online dating despite her reservations. We sat on her couch with our coffee, closer than we had been at dinner, and the conversation turned more personal. Catherine asked about my goals, what I wanted to achieve in my career and my life. I told her about my dreams of eventually starting my own marketing firm, how I was trying to learn everything I could in my current position to prepare for that someday. She was encouraging and practical, offering advice about building client relationships and developing a specialty. For the first time, I could see how her professional criticism was actually mentoring, preparing me for greater challenges. As the evening wore on, the space between us on the couch seemed to shrink. Catherine was more relaxed than I had ever seen her professional guard completely down. When she laughed at something I said, she leaned closer and I caught a hint of her perfume. The attraction that had been building through weeks of texting was impossible to ignore now. When Catherine looked at me, I could see the same awareness in her eyes. We were both adults, both interested, both tired of pretending this was just a friendly conversation. I reached over and took her hand, and she did not pull away. Her fingers were soft and warm, and I could feel her pulse quickening. We sat like that for a moment, just holding hands and looking at each other. Then Catherine leaned forward and kissed me, soft and tentative at first, then with growing confidence when I responded enthusiastically. It was everything I had imagined and more, sweet and passionate and full of promise. When we broke apart, Catherine rested her forehead against mine and whispered that she had been wanting to do that since our first date. I told her I felt the same way, that the connection we had built through messages was even stronger in person. We spent the rest of the evening talking and kissing, taking our time to explore this new physical dimension of our relationship. Catherine was affectionate in a way that surprised me. Tactile and warm, nothing like the cool professional I knew from work. I did not stay the night, though both of us wanted me to. Catherine said she wanted to take things slowly, to make sure we were building something solid rather than just acting on physical attraction. I respected her caution, even though leaving her apartment was one of the hardest things I had done in a long time. Our relationship developed gradually over the following weeks. We had dinner twice a week, alternating between restaurants and cooking at each other's places. Catherine was an excellent cook, and she seemed to enjoy taking care of me in small ways, making sure I ate well and got enough sleep. At work, we maintained strict professionalism, but there were small moments of connection that made the days brighter. A smile when we passed in the hallway, a brief touch when she handed me documents, a private joke hidden in an email about project deadlines. Dennis was getting suspicious about my sudden unavailability for our usual weekend activities, and I knew I would have to tell him about Catherine soon. He had been my friend since college, and keeping this secret from him felt wrong. I finally told him on a Saturday morning when he cornered me about my mysterious disappearances. Dennis nearly choked on his coffee when I explained that I had been dating my boss, the same woman he had heard me complaining about for months. His reaction was everything I had expected: concern about the professional implications, worry about the age difference, questions about whether I was thinking clearly. But Dennis was also a good friend, and when he saw how happy I was, he agreed to keep my secret and support whatever I decided to do. Catherine and I had been dating for about a month when she invited me to spend the weekend at her place. It felt like a natural progression, and I was excited about the prospect of more uninterrupted time together. That weekend was perfect in ways I had not expected. We cooked breakfast together, read the newspaper while drinking coffee, took a long walk through her neighborhood. The domestic intimacy was something I had been craving without realizing it. Catherine was different on weekends, softer and more playful. She wore jeans and sweaters instead of business suits, left her hair down, laughed more freely. I could see the woman she might have been if her life had taken a different path, if she had not felt the need to armor herself for corporate battles. We made love for the first time that weekend, and it was everything I had hoped it would be. Catherine was passionate but tender, confident but vulnerable. Afterward, lying in her arms, I felt more connected to another person than I ever had before. But our bubble of happiness could not last forever. The following Monday, I ran into Andrew Kelly from accounting in the elevator. Andrew was notorious for office gossip, and he made some comment about seeing me in Catherine's neighborhood over the weekend. I tried to play it off as coincidence, but I could see the speculation in Andrew's eyes. He did not say anything directly, but I knew he would be watching for more evidence of a relationship between Catherine and me. That afternoon, Catherine called me into her office to discuss a project, but really to ask if I thought anyone suspected anything about us. I told her about my encounter with Andrew, and I could see the worry in her expression. Catherine said she had been thinking about our situation a lot, and she was concerned about the potential impact on both our careers. If word got out that we were dating, it could undermine her authority and damage my reputation as someone who slept his way to better assignments. I understood her concerns, but I was not ready to give up what we had built together. I suggested we be more careful about being seen together outside of work. Maybe drive separately to restaurants and avoid her neighborhood when I visited. Catherine agreed to try being more discreet, but I could tell the stress was affecting her. She became more distant at work, almost cold in her professional interactions with me. I knew she was trying to overcompensate to make sure no one could accuse her of showing me favoritism. The strain of hiding our relationship was taking a toll on both of us. We could not be affectionate at work, could not acknowledge our connection in any way. Our text messages became our primary means of communication during the day, but even those felt risky. 2 weeks after the Andrew incident, Catherine suggested we take a break from dating. She said she needed time to think about whether we could make this work without damaging our careers. The conversation happened in her office after hours, and I could see how much it was costing her to suggest it. I argued against the break, telling Catherine that what we had was too important to sacrifice for office politics. But she was adamant that we needed to step back and evaluate our situation objectively. That night was one of the worst I had experienced in years. I went home and told Dennis everything: how happy Catherine made me, how right our relationship felt despite all the complications. Dennis listened without judgment and then gave me the best advice I had ever received. He said that if Catherine was the right person for me, we would find a way to make it work. But if we gave up at the first sign of difficulty, then maybe we were not as committed as we thought we were. He suggested I fight for the relationship, show Catherine that I was willing to take risks for what we had together. The next morning, I made a decision that could have ended my career. I walked into Catherine's office and closed the door behind me. She looked up from her computer with surprise and what might have been hope. I told Catherine that I was in love with her, not with Maria from the dating app, not with some idealized version of her, but with the real Catherine Cook. I loved her intelligence and her ambition, her vulnerability and her strength. I loved the way she challenged me to be better and the way she made me feel capable of anything. I said I understood the risks, but I was not willing to walk away from the best relationship I had ever had because we were afraid of what other people might think. If she felt the same way, I wanted to find a solution that would let us be together. Catherine stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her internal struggle. Her professional instincts were telling her to end this before it got more complicated, but her heart was telling her something different. Finally, she stood up and walked around her desk to where I was standing. She said she loved me too, had fallen for me through our text conversations, and fallen even deeper as she got to know Aki and me in person. She was terrified of the complications, but she was more terrified of losing me. We kissed then, right there in her office, and it felt like a declaration of war against everyone who would try to keep us apart. When we broke apart, Catherine said we needed to talk to human resources about our relationship, make it official so no one could accuse us of hiding anything inappropriate. That afternoon, we met with Rachel Lee from HR and explained our situation. Rachel was professional but supportive, outlining the company policies we needed to follow and the documentation we needed to complete. As long as we maintained professional boundaries at work and disclosed any potential conflicts of interest, our relationship was not prohibited. The relief of having everything out in the open was enormous. We no longer had to sneak around or worry about being discovered. Catherine and I could focus on building our relationship instead of hiding it. Of course, the office gossip was intense for a few weeks. People were shocked that the demanding Catherine Cook was dating the young guy from marketing. Some colleagues made snide comments about May-December romances and office politics, but most people were surprisingly supportive once they saw how happy we were together. My work relationship with Catherine actually improved once we stopped trying to hide our personal connection. She could give me constructive feedback without worrying about appearing too harsh, and I could ask for clarification without feeling like I was being judged. We developed a professional rhythm that worked for both of us. Dennis was thrilled that his advice had worked out, and he became one of our biggest supporters. He said he had never seen me as happy as I was with Catherine, and that was all that mattered to him. Catherine introduced me to her friends, successful women in their 40s and 50s who were initially skeptical about her younger boyfriend, but warmed up to me once they saw how I treated her. They had watched Catherine struggle through her divorce and subsequent loneliness, and they were grateful to see her genuinely happy again. I introduced Catherine to my family at Thanksgiving, 6 months after our first date. My parents were surprised by the age difference, but charmed by Catherine's warmth and intelligence. My mother later told me she had never seen me so relaxed and confident with a girlfriend before. The holidays were magical. Catherine and I spent Christmas Eve at her apartment, cooking dinner together and exchanging gifts. She gave me a leather portfolio for work presentations, practical but thoughtful. I gave her a first edition of her favorite book, something I had been searching for since our second date. We spent New Year's Eve at a quiet party with Catherine's friends, and when midnight came, our kiss felt like a promise. We had made it through the initial complications of our relationship and were building something solid and lasting. Spring brought new challenges and new growth. Catherine was promoted to senior vice president, a position she had been working toward for years. I was genuinely proud of her success, but the promotion meant longer hours and more travel, which put stress on our relationship. We learned to adapt, making the most of the time we had together and staying connected through calls and texts when Catherine was out of town. The foundation we had built through months of communication served us well during the busier periods. I was promoted too, to senior marketing coordinator, with a significant raise and more responsibility. Catherine had recused herself from the decision-making process to avoid any appearance of favoritism, but Frank Lee told me privately that my work had improved dramatically over the past year. The promotion gave me more confidence in my abilities and in my relationship with Catherine. I was no longer the intimidated junior employee who had been afraid of her criticism. I was her partner, her equal in many ways, even if our professional levels were different. That summer, Catherine and I took our first vacation together, a week in Tuscany that was everything we had dreamed it would be. Away from work and office politics, we could just be ourselves. A couple in love, exploring beautiful places together. We talked about the future during that trip, about what we wanted to build together. Catherine was thinking about starting her own consulting firm in a few years, and I shared my dreams of eventually going out on my own too. Maybe we could be business partners as well as life partners someday. The conversation about marriage came up naturally, sitting on a terrace overlooking rolling hills and vineyards. Catherine said she had never thought she would want to get married again after her divorce, but being with me had changed her perspective on a lot of things. I told her I could not imagine my life without her, that the age difference that had seemed so significant at first now felt irrelevant. We were partners in every way that mattered, and I wanted to make that official. We got engaged that night, with a ring I had been carrying around for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Catherine cried when I proposed, happy tears that she said were the first she had shed in years that were not from sadness or frustration. Planning a wedding while maintaining our professional relationship required careful navigation, but we managed it with the same communication skills that had built our relationship. We decided on a small ceremony with close friends and family, elegant but not ostentatious. Dennis was my best man, of course, and Catherine's sister Maria, the real Maria, was her maid of honor. The irony of the name was not lost on us, and we joked that fate had been trying to tell us something all along. Our wedding day was perfect, a celebration of everything we had overcome to be together. Standing at the altar, looking at Catherine in her wedding dress, I thought about how far we had come from that shocking first date when we discovered each other's identity. In my vows, I told Catherine that she had taught me the difference between being challenged and being criticized, between being pushed to grow and being torn down. She had made me a better person and a better professional, and I promised to spend our marriage supporting her dreams the way she had supported mine. Catherine's vows were about taking risks for love, about learning to trust again after being hurt. She said I had shown her that age was just a number, that connection and compatibility mattered more than social expectations. She promised to love me for exactly who I was while challenging me to become who I could be. Our honeymoon was 2 weeks in Greece, islands and ancient ruins and lazy days by the sea. We talked about starting a family, something Catherine had thought was no longer possible at her age, but that modern medicine made feasible if we wanted it. The conversation about children was complex, involving considerations of Catherine's age, our career goals, and the practical challenges of raising a child with an 18-year age gap between parents. But we agreed to try, to see what the future held for us. When we returned from our honeymoon, we faced the challenge of merging our lives completely. Catherine's apartment became our apartment, and we worked together to make it feel like home for both of us. I brought my books and my coffee maker. She made space in her closets and her routine. The adjustment was easier than either of us had expected. We had already learned to navigate each other's work schedules and personal habits through months of dating. Marriage felt like a natural evolution rather than a dramatic change. At work, being married actually simplified things. No one could question our relationship anymore, and we had developed such strong professional boundaries that our personal connection rarely interfered with business decisions. Catherine and I started attending industry conferences together, presenting as a team on marketing and client relations integration. Our different perspectives and complementary skills made us effective collaborators, and several companies tried to recruit us as a package deal. Those offers got us thinking seriously about starting our own firm. Catherine had the client relationships and business development skills, while I had the marketing expertise and fresh perspective. Together, we could offer something unique in the consulting world. We spent months developing a business plan, researching the market, and building financial projections. It was exciting to work together on something that belonged to both of us, a shared dream that combined our professional skills with our personal partnership. The decision to leave Pinnacle Consulting was not easy. Catherine had built her career there, and I had learned so much in my time with the company. But we both knew it was time to take the next step, to build something of our own. Our last day at Pinnacle was emotional. Colleagues who had watched our relationship develop from awkward beginnings to solid partnership threw us a farewell party. Frank Lee gave a speech about how our professional growth had mirrored our personal growth and how we had proven that workplace relationships could succeed with the right foundation. Cook Williams Consulting opened its doors 6 months later, named for both of us and representing the equal partnership we had built. Our first client was a referral from Catherine's former contacts, and our first project was a success that led to 3 more contracts. Working together as business partners was different from working together as colleagues. We had to learn new ways to communicate, new boundaries between our professional and personal relationships. But the foundation of respect and trust we had built served us well in this new context. Our first year in business was challenging but rewarding. We worked long hours, took on projects that stretched our capabilities, and slowly built a reputation for innovative solutions and exceptional client service. Catherine's experience and my fresh ideas proved to be a powerful combination. By our second anniversary, Cook Williams Consulting was profitable and growing. We had hired 2 junior consultants and were considering expanding into new markets. The business success felt like validation of our partnership in all its forms, but the most important milestone came that spring when Catherine told me she was pregnant. At 49, she had not been sure it was possible, and we had both prepared ourselves for the possibility that children might not be in our future. The pregnancy was carefully monitored given Catherine's age, but everything progressed normally. We spent months preparing for parenthood, reading books, taking classes, and setting up a nursery in what had been Catherine's home office. Our daughter Emma was born healthy and beautiful, with Catherine's dark hair and my stubborn chin. Holding her for the first time, I felt a completeness I had not known I was missing. Catherine cried again, happy tears for the family we had created together. Balancing new parenthood with running a business was exhausting, but we managed it with the same teamwork that had characterized our relationship from the beginning. We took turns with night feedings, shared household responsibilities, and supported each other through the challenges of sleep deprivation and constant worry. Emma changed everything for us, but in the best possible way. She gave us new perspective on what mattered, new motivation to build something lasting. Our business became not just about our success, but about creating a legacy for our daughter. As I write this, Emma is 2 years old, and Catherine and I are preparing to celebrate our 3rd wedding anniversary. Our business is thriving, our family is healthy, and our relationship is stronger than ever. People still sometimes comment on our age difference, especially when we are out with Emma, and people assume Catherine is her grandmother rather than her mother. But those comments matter less now than they did in the beginning. We know who we are and what we have built together. Catherine is 51 now, and I am 32. The 18-year gap that once seemed so significant now feels like just another fact about our relationship, no more important than the fact that she likes her coffee black and I prefer mine with cream. Our marriage works because we built it on a foundation of genuine friendship and mutual respect. We challenge each other professionally, support each other personally, and share a vision for the future that includes both our business and our family. Looking back on that first shocking date when we discovered each other's identity, I am amazed by how much has changed. The woman who once intimidated me with her professional demands is now my partner in every sense of the word. The relationship that began with confusion and complications has become the most stable and satisfying part of my life. Catherine often says that online dating was the best mistake she ever made, creating a fake identity that led her to her real self. I think about that sometimes, how we might never have connected if we had not been able to get to know each other without the baggage of our professional relationship. The text conversations that started everything taught us how to communicate honestly, how to be vulnerable with each other, how to build intimacy through words and shared thoughts. Those skills have served us well through marriage, parenthood, and business partnership. Our story is not conventional, and it has not always been easy. Dating your boss, navigating an age gap relationship, starting a business together, having a child later in life. All of these things came with challenges we had to work through, but every challenge made us stronger. Every obstacle we overcame together proved that our connection was real and lasting. We learned that love is not about finding someone who fits perfectly into your existing life, but about finding someone worth reshaping your life around. Dennis is still my best friend, and he never gets tired of taking credit for convincing me to try online dating. He is Emma's godfather now, and he spoils her shamelessly whenever he visits. He has found his own lasting relationship, inspired partly by seeing what Catherine and I built together. Catherine's friends have become my friends, and my family has embraced her completely. Emma has grandparents who adore her, and aunts and uncles who compete to be her favorite. Our unconventional beginning led to a very conventional family, full of love and support and shared traditions. At work, we are known as a power couple, partners who complement each other perfectly and deliver exceptional results for our clients. The professional respect we have built in the industry is something we are both proud of, proof that our relationship enhanced rather than hindered our careers. But the real measure of our success is not professional accolades or business growth. It is the quiet moments at home, reading bedtime stories to Emma, planning family vacations, discussing our dreams for the future. It is the partnership we have built that encompasses every aspect of our lives. Catherine and I talk sometimes about what would have happened if one of us had not shown up for that first date. If the shock of recognition had sent us running in opposite directions, we probably would have continued working together professionally, maintaining our distant colleague and relationship at being, never knowing what we were missing. The thought makes us both grateful for the courage we found that night, the willingness to sit down and have an honest conversation despite the awkwardness of the situation. That decision to stay and talk instead of fleeing in embarrassment changed everything for both of us. Our relationship has taught me that love does not follow a predictable timeline or conventional rules. Sometimes the right person is someone you never would have considered, someone who challenges your assumptions about what you want and need in a partner. Age difference relationships face unique challenges, but they also offer unique rewards. Catherine's life experience and emotional maturity have taught me things I never could have learned from someone my own age. My energy and fresh perspective have brought excitement and possibility back into her life. The key is not pretending that differences do not exist, but embracing them as strengths rather than obstacles. Catherine and I bring different things to our relationship, and that diversity makes us stronger as a couple and as business partners. For anyone watching this who might be in a similar situation, whether it is an age gap relationship, a workplace romance, or just a connection that seems complicated, I want you to know that love is worth fighting for. Not every relationship that starts with complications will work out, but the ones that do are often the strongest because they are built on a foundation of overcoming obstacles together. The most important thing is honest communication. Catherine and I succeeded because we were willing to be vulnerable with each other, to share our fears and hopes and dreams. We listened without judgment and supported each other through uncertainty. We also succeeded because we were both ready for a serious relationship. If either of us had been looking for something casual, the complications would have been too much to overcome. But because we both wanted depth and commitment, we were willing to work through the challenges. Starting a business together added another layer of complexity to our relationship, but it also gave us a shared purpose beyond our personal connection. Working toward common goals strengthened our partnership and proved that we could be effective collaborators in all areas of life. Having Emma later in Catherine's life was a risk, but it was also a blessing that brought us closer together. Parenting requires teamwork and compromise, skills we had already developed through our relationship and business partnership. Our story continues to evolve. Emma is growing and changing every day. Our business is expanding into new markets, and Catherine and I are still discovering new things about each other after more than 4 years together. But the foundation remains the same as it was during those first text conversations when we were still Maria and Brian, two people looking for connection and finding something deeper than either of us had expected. We built our relationship on honesty, respect, and genuine affection. And those elements continue to sustain us through whatever challenges come our way. The woman I thought was making my work life difficult turned out to be the person who would make my whole life better. The boss who intimidated me became the partner who supports and challenges me in equal measure. The age gap that seemed like an insurmountable obstacle became just another part of our unique love story. If you are watching this and you believe in second chances, in unexpected love, in relationships that defy conventional wisdom? Please let us know in the comments. Share your own stories of finding love in unlikely places or with unexpected people. Like this video if you believe that age is just a number when it comes to real connection. Subscribe to hear more stories about love that overcomes obstacles, relationships that prove conventional wisdom wrong, and people who were brave enough to take risks for happiness. Your support means everything to creators who are sharing their real stories with the world. Most importantly, remember that love has no expiration date, no rules about who you are supposed to be with, no timeline that everyone must follow. Whether you are 29 or 49 or any age in between, whether you are looking for love or have given up hope of finding it, remember that the right person might be someone you never expected in a place you never thought to look. Catherine and I found each other through a combination of modern technology and old-fashioned courage. We built our relationship through honest communication and mutual respect. We overcame obstacles through teamwork and commitment. None of it was easy, but all of it was worth it. Today, as I watch Catherine reading to Emma in the evening light filtering through our living room windows, I am grateful for every moment that led us to this point. The awkward first date, the workplace complications, the family adjustments, the business challenges, all of it was part of the journey that brought us here. Love is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone perfect for you. Someone who makes you want to be the best version of yourself while accepting you exactly as you are. Catherine does that for me every day, and I hope I do the same for her. Our story started with a case of mistaken identity and a shocking revelation in an upscale restaurant. It continues with a marriage, a family, a business, and a partnership that encompasses every aspect of our lives. And the best part is, we are still writing new chapters together, still discovering new ways to grow and love and support each other. So if you are out there wondering if real love exists, if it is possible to find someone who sees you completely and loves you anyway, if relationships can survive complications and obstacles and still thrive, let our story be proof that the answer is yes. Love is real, love is possible, and love is always worth the risk. Thank you for listening to our story, for believing in love that defies expectations, and for supporting content that celebrates real relationships in all their messy, complicated, beautiful reality. Catherine and I are living proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected beginnings. Keep believing in love, keep taking chances on connection, and keep your hearts open to possibilities you never imagined. You never know when your own life-changing moment might be waiting just around the corner, disguised as an ordinary evening that turns out to be anything but ordinary.